every piece of the Talmud is either a statement, a question, an answer, or a proof. That is, at any line of the Talmud, that is what it's going to be. And then there's also a disproof at times. But basically, statement, question, answer, and proof. Anything in the Talmud fits into one of those. Again, when you give Kiddushin, when you give betrothal to the woman, to become your wife, so you have to say these certain words, right? Which is that you are consecrated to me, that you are being married to me. Okay? So the question is, what if you said something? Remember, we had one class a number of weeks ago on if he gave or she gave, and who said, and remember giving and saying. Remember, that was that whole class. Now we're doing a different topic. Now we're doing the topic of what if you said something similar to what you're supposed to say, but not exactly. And it connotes what you're trying to say, but it's not exactly. Is that going to work for Kiddushin or not? And we're going to see there's going to be a lot of ramifications on that. So let's start in the Gemara and let's see. And there's a number of nice points here in the Talmud, and there's a nice thing known as a Tosfos, which is one of the commentaries on that. And we'll see if we can get to all that and just put it together. It's a nice little piece of Gemara over here. So the Talmud starts off. So if we're doing it on the first page, that's the actual Talmud. That's where I put those brackets, Amar Shmuel. Right? Okay, you see that? All right, there you go, Sam. Or if you want to use it on the Art Scroll version, which is the second page. So right there on the bottom, you see Amar Shmuel. So we can, that's page number 2. So let's start off. The Gemara starts off and says Amar Shmuel.
Kiddushin.
Right. So Kiddushin, by Kiddushin, Nasan la Kesef. If he gives her kesef, he gives her money, vishava kesef, right, or shava kesef, or the value of money, right? Because remember we had said that time in the Mishnah that a person is going to give kesef or shava kesef, or v'amar, and then he says to her, harei at mikudeshet, you are betrothed, okay, or harei at meureset, you are as well. There's another form of betrothal. To be erison. Remember we said Kiddushin and erison, they were basically the same thing. So it's another form of the word betroth. Or harei at li'intu, you're as a wife. Okay? That's the wording that he said to her. Harei zu mikudeshes. The Gemara says that she is married to him. However, if you say hareini isheich, I am your husband, or hareini balich, I am your another form of husband, or hareini arusech, or I am your arus, which is also a form of Kiddushin. Ein kan beis mechush. That means there's nothing to talk about in the sense. There's no concern at all. It's no issue of Kiddushin because that's not what Kiddushin is. And we discussed this last time we went into that. Remember we said the idea that Kiddushin is he's in a way taking her. He's taking her as a wife. That she is coming to him. The Torah says the words ki yikach ish. The man takes a lady and he takes her as his wife. So therefore the Kiddushin has to be that he's the one who's, how does he take her? By saying, you are consecrated to me, or you are married to me, as opposed to I am your husband. Okay, so far what we've said is...
So it's to use the word mikudeshet.
Right. So
if it doesn't use that word, then it's not valid.
So, but even more than that, here, again, when a guy's under the chuppah, okay, and he gives a ring to his wife, the words that he actually says, okay, the official word that he says are harei at mikudeshes li.
Mikudeshes, here it says hari.
So one second. Remember we discussed this a few weeks ago. We said that the official thing, what a person says, nowadays, any person who gets married, what they say is, harei at mikudeshes li. You are mikudeshes, betrothed to me.
Right.
Now here it doesn't say that.
Right.
Here Shmuel just said, and this is going to be the topic of discussion. Shmuel just said, what if he says to her, he's talking to her, right? Man's talking, to this proposed, this lady who's about to get married to him, and he says to her, he gives her the ring, and he gives her the kesef, the money, and he says, you are mikudeshes. But it doesn't say the word li, it doesn't say to me. So far it seems to say that it works. Right? That's what Shmuel says. It works. However, if he says to her, I am your husband, or I'm your any other form, that's not going to work. Okay, so that's so far what we've said. Okay, that's and Ein Kam Beis Mechush, right, is just pointed out. Why? Because again, remember, he has to take her, not that he's being given over to.
Right.
Okay, so let's continue on. And the Gemara says V'chein. So now we're going further in the Talmud over here. And I apologize that it got cut off a little bit in the Art Scroll version over there. But I think if you read the basic English is there, so that should work. V'chein begerishin, and the same thing by gerushin. Now gerushin is divorce, okay? Meaning, by divorce, the Torah says that a person, the man, then kind of sends her off, like she's not married to him anymore. So it says nasan la, if he gave to her the gerushin, ve'amar la, and he said to her, harei at mishulachas, you are sent away, from the word shalach, you're sent away, or harei at migureshes, so another form of being sent away, or harei at muteres l'chol, now you're permitted to all men, because remember the whole form of Kiddushin was that now you're specific to me and you can't marry any other man. That was the whole purpose of Kiddushin, of being married to her. So if you're divorcing the lady, so then you're saying you're permissible to any other man, right? Because, so, harezu migureshes, all these cases work. Okay, now notice again, there's no li here. There's no to me, right? Remember, we just said a second ago that the official form of Kiddushin, right, is that you got to say, harei ha-mekudeshes li, you are betrothed to me. And gerushin, officially, you got to say, you are being sent away from me. But that wasn't said either here. Okay, now, and it continues.
It just says you're sent away.
You're sent away.
Being Kiddushin.
Right.
And he gives to her.
Right. Or, and the Gemara goes on again and says, Eini ishech, I am not your husband anymore. Eini baalich, again, I'm not your husband. Eini aruseh, ein kam beis mechush.
Two different words for husband.
Yeah, these are all correct. Baal is a husband owner. It's kind of like more like a husband.
It's interesting that the Gemara gives two examples of that. I guess it's saying if you say this or this.
Yeah, it's trying to say, meaning ishech is from the word like ish, isha, like a spouse.
Oh, okay.
So, and Baal is more a husband, would be, that'd be, but it's a reference to the same. So if the person said any of these forms of words, which would all, so again, what's the difference between, again, there's by Kiddushin 2 cases and by divorce 2 cases. Again, the 2 cases by Kiddushin are what? The two cases on what, according to Rav Shmuel? According to Shmuel, 1 case work, meaning there's 3 examples within 1 case that work, and then 3 examples that don't work, right? What's the basic idea of what does work?
If he says you're betrothed.
You're betrothed.
Period.
Right. That works.
Money and that works.
Right. And what doesn't work is if he says what?
He says here's money and I'm your husband.
I'm your husband. That doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or and by your
right, any of those forms is basically saying I'm your spouse, I'm your husband. And by gerushin, by divorce, what's the case that does work?
If he says to her, where's the word? It's migureshes.
Well, hareya mishulachas, meaning you're being sent away, or hareya migureshes, right? Now both, you're being sent all the way. You're being sent away. But if you say that I'm no longer your husband, right? Mm-hmm. So that's not going to work, right? So we have the basic idea of what's being said over here. So here's going to come the point right now, the next line. So let's go to the next line of the Gemara. It says, Amrle Rav Papa Labai. So Rav Papa, that was his name.
I love that guy's name.
Right. So there's a lot of.
He's the famous Italian Talmudic rabbi.
Right. That's right.
Papa.
So Amrle Rav Papa Labai. He said to Abaye, look what he says. Does this mean Lamemra? Does this mean to say to Savar Shmuel that Shmuel holds the Yadayim Shein Mochichos Havyan Yadayim? Well, this is very interesting. That a yad, this is a yad, right? A yad is a hand, right? So there's a concept of something that is not fully proving something, but it's pretty clear indication of the thing. So they use the word yad as like a handle to something, right? Just like it's a handle in the sense that if you have something that's pretty clear indication of what you mean, but it's not saying it exactly, does that work or not work? Meaning, so the Gemara seems to feel at this point that Shmuel holds Yadayim shein mochichos havin Yadayim, right? Yadayim that are not mochichos, which means don't prove it exactly the point, but pretty much there, that they're Yadayim. That means that that works as a yad, meaning to say, the real Kiddushin, let's go back to case number 1 by Kiddushin. Real Kiddushin is where a person said, Harei Ambiguity li, you are betrothed to me. So what if you didn't? So what if you're talking to this lady and you tell the lady, you are betrothed? And it's you and her there. There aren't a million people there, right? And it's not like there's a man standing right next to her that she might, right? But you're saying you're betrothed.
Assuming she's been given money.
And she's being given money, right? So does that work or not?
Well, according to Rav Shmuel.
So according to Shmuel, it seems like it works. So it seems like Shmuel is saying that it seems that there's a concept that if you have a yad is I think the word that they use over here is ambiguous abbreviations of language are considered valid abbreviations, right? Meaning to say that if you're not specifically saying li, but you're saying Arei Mekudeshes, you're Mekudeshes, which is like an indication that it's pretty clear that it's to me, but it's not for sure saying it out. Does that work or not? So it sounds like Shmuel saying yes, but that's not so here's the case. If a person says Ha'omer aha means I, basically like I will, I shall be. Is the official word. Ehe is I think the official pronunciation, right? Which is it says Harei Nazir. The person is a Nazir. So there's a concept called a Nazarite. Okay, if we're not familiar, we'll just explain what a Nazarite is. A person who takes these certain vows to go up in holiness, let's just say, up in status. Basically, they don't drink wine, they don't become impure. They have certain right. So it's a very there's certain things that they do. There's something in the Torah. It's called a Nazir, a Nazarite. Now it's not something necessarily, but there were individuals who were known as Nazarites or Shimshon, and so. Person
from the Tanakh.
From Tanakh, yeah.
Oh, really?
And the Torah also talks about. There's a concept of Nazir in the Torah, and it's not like it's done now really, but there's the concept of a Nazir. So that's the concept. The person basically takes these certain vows, and it kind of uplifts them, to a higher level of holiness and closeness to Hashem. Anyway, so if a person, and there's a form that you have to do in order to become a Nazir, you have to say a certain thing that allows the person or makes the person then. So if a person said these words, Ehe, so the Gemara is saying Harei Nazir, or the Mishnah is rather saying that then the person is a Nazir. So the Talmud asks on that, Vavina and Bavadilma Ahei Vatanis. Well, the person just said, Ahei, I shall be, meaning you have to typically say Harei Nazir, or I think it's a Reza or something along the lines of I'm becoming a Nazir. So you didn't say that, you just said I shall be. So what does I shall be mean? Does I shall be mean that I want to become a Nazir? So then Talmud says maybe it means I want to take on a fast, right? Because there's some concept by fast days that they would say. So how do you know what it means? So the Talmud answers, remember Shmuel, V'hu shaya Nazir over Lefanav. It was talking about where there was a Nazir who was passing by in front of him, meaning there was one guy, he wanted to become a Nazir, and there's another person who's a Nazir who's passing by in front of him, and this one, the guy who wants to become a Nazir says, I shall be. So the fact that this other Nazir is passing by in front of him, you're kind of saying, I want to be like him, and a big Ash. So that's why we say it works as a Nazir. Okay, so the Talmud says, Taima de Nazir over Lefanov. So the reason why it works is because there was another Nazir who was passing by him. However, halav hachilo. If that were not the case, then it would not work, right? If you would just say the word, the only reason it works is because there was another Nazir passing by in front of him. But if there were no Nazir passing by in front of him, what would we say? If you just said the words "ehei," what is it? What would we say?
What does that mean?
I don't know what that means, right? And therefore, the Mishnah seems to be asking a question on Shmuel that you, Shmuel, seem to hold Yadayim shein mochichos or Yadayim, right? Meaning, as we just said before, that to quote it over here in the, right, that, what were the words? That an ambiguous abbreviation is considered a valid abbreviation, right? Because that's what he said before, but that seems not, because we see over here, when a person says the words ehei, it doesn't work. Kiddushin is man with woman, right? Meaning that's the scene of Kiddushin. So when you say these words, Harei Mekudeshes, and you didn't say li, does that work or not? So Talmud's saying, according to Shmuel, yes, it works. Okay? That's the scene of Kiddushin. Nazir, you don't need another guy there. Nazir is a guy says his own proclamation, Harei Nazir. Now here he didn't say that. Here he just said these words, ehei, I shall be.
Right.
Now what does this I shall be mean? So Talmud said, it means works as a Nazir.
Right. Talmud
asks on that, what do you mean? Maybe it means I want to have a fast day on me. Talmud says, no, it really does mean I want to become a Nazir. Why? Because the case happened to be a case where there was another Nazir who was passing by. You didn't need that to be.
The saying sometimes ambiguities work in certain situations.
Right, but that's not the point of the time. Yeah, but that's not the point. That's when ahei referred to yes Nazir. But that wasn't the point of the Talmud. The point of the Talmud starts from the Taima. Tama, the reason that it works is because Nazir is over Lefana, because there's a Nazir passing by. But the implication is, halav hachi, if there were no Nazir passing by, and you just said this ambiguous form of ehei, it would not work.
Okay.
That means, so ambiguity doesn't work. Okay, so that means then there's a question on Shmuel. Shmuel seems to be saying ambiguity does work. Right. Mishnah seems to be clearly saying ambiguity doesn't work.
Right.
Okay.
I agree.
Are we good?
Right.
Yeah.
We good? Meaning, if you're telling me, no, you see it does work because by the case of where there's another Nazir passing by, no, but that's a specific, the reason why it's working is because of the fact that there's
that's not an ambiguity then.
Well, I mean, I guess it's ambiguous in the sense, what do you mean? But it's much more of an implication that, yeah, I mean,
ambiguities never work.
I mean, really ambiguity, right? Because meaning there's a reason why that's yes Nazir, because there's none, I shall be. Meaning another guy passing right by while I say it, okay, so yes, the fact that works, that doesn't show me much. But if that weren't the case, I didn't have Nazir there and I say it, then the implication would be that it wouldn't work, right? Okay. So that's the question. Ambiguity seems from the Mishnah doesn't work. So the Talmud then answers, we're talking about a case. Wow, this whole thing at the end, we had this all wrong. Really, Shmuel's case was where he said li. Right? At the end of the day, really, we botched. I guess Shmuel's statement really botched. Really, right? Yeah. The fact that it worked, really, there was a li there. Right? Okay? The Talmud then, we'll just say very quickly the next few steps, and I want to get to this point, which is a nice point in a Tosfos, which will get to some nice logic. The Talmud then asks on that, it says, if that's the case, so my kamashmalan, which means, well, what's then Shmuel teaching us? Of course we know if a person gives a wife money and says, Harei Mekudeshes li, of course that works. We don't. That's what Kiddushin is. We don't need Shmuel to come and teach us that.
Right.
So the answer is, Hani Lishni, it's all for those second statements. Meaning, it's really, you're right, for the first part we didn't really need it. But to Hani Lishni Basroi Kamashmalan, it's for the second parts of the statement. Meaning, what was the second part? Remember where you said, I am becoming your husband. Or by Gerushin, I am no longer your husband. Right? So there, we wanted to teach us specifically that idea that it only works where the husband, let's say by Kiddushin, where the husband is taking her as the wife, not giving himself. And by Gerushin, where he's sending her away, not, absolving himself. So the point was really, the point, Shmuel's point was the second, remember within Kiddushin there was cases 1 and cases 2, and within Gerushin there was cases 1 and cases 2. The whole lesson of Shmuel is all about cases 2.
So cases 2 for Kiddushin and
Gerushin, right? Okay. Because cases 1,
so it's all for what doesn't work.
It's all for what doesn't work. Happens to me, you wanted to put in what does work because it flows much better. Okay, that's the basic piece of the Talmud. Okay, so now let's get back. So here's going to come the logic. Let's make sure we're all together. We're going to say now a nice little piece of logic, and it's going to be hopefully very beautiful for everyone. Now. And then we'll end on that point. So here's the point. Let's get again the statement, right? And Doug, you were saying this before. What is the exact question of the Talmud? right? The question was ambiguity, right? It sounded like ambiguity was working from Shmuel, right? And yet we were saying from our Mishnah, it seemed to imply that if you would just say, I shall be, a hey, right, in order to become a Nazir, that doesn't work, right? It only works when there's a Nazir passing by, but if there's no Nazir passing by, it doesn't work. So it seemed the Talmud felt that we have a solid question over here that ambiguity doesn't work. So therefore, Shmuel, you're like, you're in trouble. Why are you in trouble? Because you have a Mishnah against you. You can't have a Mishnah against you. A Mishnah is much earlier than the people in the Talmud, right? So if you have a Mishnah against you, that's like that's pretty serious, That's like you lose, It's like a game, It's like, Rabbi, that's not going to work, You got the. So that was a question of the Talmud, right? Now, does anyone have a question on that? Now it's going to be thinking time for everyone over here, right? Does anyone have a question on that? Does the question? Do you like the Talmud's question? I mean, the Talmud had a question. And the Talmud then felt because of that question, then we had to change the whole thing around. We said, really, Shmuel said Li. But before Shmuel said Li, before that was the answer, right? The Talmud felt we had a solid question, right? Because otherwise it wouldn't have asked it. So do you like his question? What do you think? I mean, do you agree with the Talmud's question? Right? Because we have to always think for ourselves. Do we agree? Do we agree? Yeah, do we agree with this question? Or maybe there's...
The question, does ambiguity work?
Well, the question seems to be, Shmuel, you seem to imply that ambiguity does work, yet the Mishnah seems to imply that ambiguity doesn't work.
Right. Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so the question is, meaning the Talmud, is the Talmud just asking a very, very like, I wouldn't say ambiguous question. That wouldn't be the good. A very, that would sound like yeah, a very just, broad question like, does ambiguity work or not? Well, we see one place does work, one place doesn't. I guess that's a question. Now, I guess if that were the case, okay. But if there's a little bit more to it, that if this whole thing about yadayim she'in mochichos havyan yadayim, which means to say that if you have something that seems to, it doesn't prove it completely, but it's a pretty clear, it seems to be a pretty good indication that that's the case, so that works. That seemed to be what Yadayim Shem Ochichos were referring to, right? So that, by Kiddushin, sounds pretty good, right? I mean, you have a woman, and there's a lady standing in front of you, right? And you give her the money, and you say to her, you are Mikudeshes, right? So
it was that easy to get married back in the olden days. You just pick anyone. I like
her. She's got a great. I'm saying, like she's got a great. What I'm saying, yeah, it doesn't work without that. But she's got. But meaning there's no other guy around. There's no other woman around. You know what I'm saying? Like it's pretty. Even though you didn't say Lee, but it sounds pretty
common sense approach.
The common sense approach, like, okay, yeah, but if anyone's watching this, they're thinking, okay, well, who else is she married to? If she agrees, then she's going to come running back, I'm not married, you know what I'm saying? Who else would agree to get married? Some random guy somewhere else, I'm saying, like So, okay, that makes sense, I hear that. But what about the case of a hay? Well, the case where, by the Nazir, right, where the person said those words, a hay, right?
Oh, right.
Meaning, and
I shall be.
Right, I shall be. Let's say it in English. It's I shall be. Say it, I shall be. And there was no Nazir passing by, right? So the Talmud wanted to use that as a question. Oh, you see, it doesn't work, right? Ambiguous doesn't work. Now, I might think that, let's maybe read the words of this Tosas over here. Tosas is one of the commentaries on the Talmud. And you see it on the side. It's on the first page, Doug. And we'll just read it quickly, but speak it out more. Just in
Aramaic.
The the whole Talmud is Aramaic, really. But
no, this is Hebrew.
No, this is there are definitely parts of this. This is has like there are Aramaic parts of this, but there's a lot of Hebrew also, but there are Aramaic in terms of. But this is really the same
in terms of the word, but it's written in Hebrew.
Right. So here we go. So it says on the first page, right? You see that one that's marked off. So I'll just read it for you, and then we can read the one Halav Hachi. This one right here. Already, then we'll speak it out, just the English, what this means. So Tosfos is going, this is called Tosfos. He's one of the commentaries on the Talmud. So he's going to be asking a question now on the words of so the Gemara had a question. He's going to ask on the Gemara. So first, there's a quote of the Gemara, right? The Gemara said the words halav hachi without the nazir passing by. Then lo, we would not say that ambiguity would work. So alma kasavar, it seems that we hold yadayim shemechichos loab do not work, right? That was the quote of the Talmud, right? So Tosfos is asking now, Vim Tomer, I'll ask for you a question. Amai lo mashani, why doesn't the Talmud answer? Diliolam really havyin yadayim? Really, it does work, like Shmuel said. Oh, but you have a question over here from this piece of the Talmud. This right? It seems like the Talmud had a question, right? Nah, there's not a question. He says, because v'hasam dekamaraha over there where he said the words "I shall be," afilu yadayim shemuchichos lo havyin. It's not even considered a yad. It's not even like anything. Dedilma habatanis kamar, because maybe you meant aha batanis, meaning if there's no nazir passing by in front of you. Right? You say the words, I shall be. Why in the world would I think I shall be has anything at all even close to an indication of Nazir? Mm-hmm. Right? I would say it means nothing. Asking. He's saying, what was the Talmud's question? The Talmud felt it had a question that, you see over here, by a case which is ambiguous, right? But so you see ambiguity doesn't work. So he's saying this has nothing to do with ambiguity. This is not even considered like anything close to being a nazir, right? Meaning this whole case of these yads. A yad means like it's pretty close to. It's an indication that it's like the thing. So by Kiddushin, it's an indication you want to marry her, but it's just you didn't like spell it out. It wasn't 100% clear. Let's just say it's 80% clear. That's what you mean. So Shmuel felt that works, right? The Talmud then felt we have a question. You see a yad, 80% doesn't work. So Tosfos is asking, this is not an 80%, this is a 40%. Right? Well, because if you don't have a nazir passing by in front of you, right? You say the words, ahei, I shall be.
Right.
So I don't know, what does I shall be mean? I shall be means nazir, fasting, something else. I shall be, a good person. I don't know what it means. It means anything, right? Meaning, it's one thing if you're talking to a lady and you tell the lady, "Harei mikudeshes," you're mikudeshes. So that's a pretty 80%, I would say even probably 90% chance that you're saying you're being married to me, even though you didn't say the words "to me," right? But if you say "I shall be," what does "I shall be" mean? So this is not 80%. This is 40%. So that's what Tosfos is asking. Tosfos is asking. He's asking on the Talmud's question.
How can 40% work even when there is a Navi present?
And therefore, how does the Gemara feel that you have a question? The Gemara feels that it has a question from this that is a comparable case. So Shmuel, you're up the creek in a way, like you have a big question on you, Shmuel. You say these things, ambiguity works. Oh, we see from the Mishnah ambiguity doesn't work. That was the Talmud's question, right? But you have to be speaking, in order to ask a question, you have to be talking about the same type of case, right? The same form of a case. And in one place you feel it does work, one place doesn't work, right? That's a question. But if I tell you, we're not talking about the same case.
Right.
Shmuel's case was an 80% case. This case of the Mishnah is a 40% case. That's not what you're talking about. It's not a question.
Right.
You hear that point, Doug?
Yeah, Tosfos is saying basically that there should be no question that ambiguity works.
Correct. The Talmud doesn't have any question. Right, exactly. Say it out. What's the question? I mean, the Talmud should have no question.
Right.
What's his point? Meaning, really, the Talmud thought they had a question of
whether or not ambiguity works.
Because it felt we had a case from the Nazir case, which was comparable to the Kiddushin case, and you see that doesn't work.
Right.
So Tosfos says what?
Tosfos says that ambiguity does work.
Shmuel's right. Oh, the Mishnah.
Yeah. Oh, and then the Mishnah says that.
Why isn't the Mishnah a question on Shmuel?
Why is the Mishnah not a question on Shmuel?
Yeah, that's what Tosas is doing. Tosas is making the Mishnah not... Tosas is saying... Right. Why?
I have to go back to the Mishnah. That's with the Hari, and it's not because it's because it's stating that the ambiguity does work.
Well, no, because it's not talking about an 80% case.
Oh, right.
In order to ask a question...
It has to be comparable.
So again, very, very important. I remember I used to always have this when we were learning always in yeshiva. You have to always make sure that and this is just logic anyway. If I'm asking you a question, right? Let's say I'm asking a contradiction between two cases. The two cases have to be equally, exactly equal, right? Meaning, if you tell me one case is not exactly the same as this, it's not a question. It's not a contradiction.
Right.
The reason why this is that way is because it has a different factor involved, right? So it's kind of it's basically the same thing right now. Meaning, in order to ask a question, you have to be comparable and talking about the exact same case. Mm-hmm. So let's just use the words 80%. It makes it much easier, I think, if you say it like that. So 80% case was the Kiddushin case. So we thought the Nazir case was also an 80% case. Right. So 80%, when I say 80%, I mean 80% indication that this is what you mean, right? So, okay, then very good, you have a valid question. That's what the Talmud felt its question was. Tosas comes along and says, that's not a question. What are you talking about? Shmuel really is right? That 80% really does work. Oh, you want to bring down this case of the Mishnah from Nazir? That's not an 80%, it's a 40%. What are you talking about? When I say the word I shall be, what does I shall be mean? I don't know, it could be anything. I shall be a good person, right? I shall. And therefore it's not an 80% case. So the fact that it doesn't work is not a question on Shmuel.
It's not the same question.
This is what's going on. This is like the piece that we're dealing with. And then this is like the clarity, trying to provide clarity in what that piece is talking about. Okay? That's probably a good way to... So look what it says. Tosas then answers the words like this. It says, see the Vav Yud Lamed in Tosas? In the Hebrew. You see where it says Vav Yud and then 2 lines Lamed.
Yes.
Yeah. So that means the words V'yesh Lomer. That's when you see that means Tosas is answering now. This is the answer. So look what he says. He says, D'tfei mashma ahal lashon naziris mi lashon tanis. It is more implying that the word aha, I shall be, is referring to a nazir as opposed to referring to fasting. The aha, wow. So it sounds like he's saying so far that when you say the words aha does have more of an implication to nazir. Well, how do you know that? Look what he says. The aha mashma, because the words aha imply miyad, immediately. I guess I don't claim to know language that well, but the word aha, I shall be, Tosas is telling you, that means miyad, immediately. Now, look what he says. Upa'amim she'achal v'lo matzi l'meimar aha. And there are times that a person will eat food, right? And they won't be able to say, meaning let's say a person, and they won't be able to say aha, betanis, Lamachar, meaning a person wants to say, I shall be, meaning I want to have a fast day on me. Well, if they ate already, so then they can't make it a fast day until Lamachar, until tomorrow. So it can't be immediately. Avogabi Naziris, but when it comes to becoming a Nazirite, a Nazir, Miyad Yachal Haskell Nazirusum Yurtza. A person's able to do it immediately, just like that.
So therefore it is 80% and 80%.
Exactly. Meaning Tosas is coming along, right, to say that apparently in the wording of the word aha, that aha mi has an implication of immediately. And immediately only applies to Naziris. Why? Because a person's able to become a Nazir immediately. But when it comes to a Tanis, taking on a fast, right, it doesn't work necessarily immediately, because what if the person ate before? Right. So then the fast won't start till the next day. Each of these represents something different, meaning there's 4, the way I had it is 4, there's a statement. Every piece of the Talmud is either a statement, a question, an answer, or a proof. That is, at any line of the Talmud, that is what it's going to be. And then there's also a disproof at times. Mm-hmm. But basically statement, question, answer, and proof. Anything in the Talmud fits into one of those at that point. Again, the Talmud first went through, the cases of Kiddushin that worked, the case of Kiddushin that don't work. Then we went through the case of Gerushin, divorce that worked, the case of Gerushin that don't work. Our point of doing all that was to introduce this whole point of ambiguity. Mm-hmm. How did that introduce the whole point of ambiguity? Because it really all came from that first case of Kiddushin, right? The first case of Kiddushin was where he went to the woman and he said, Harei Megudeshes, but he didn't say li, right? You are betrothed, but not to me. So that was a little ambiguous, right? It didn't say clearly to me. So the Talmud, according to Shmuel, was saying that worked.
Right.
So then we brought down this Mishnah, right, from Nazir, right, which seemed to imply that ambiguity doesn't work, right? And we answered that. We said, no, really, the Shmuel's talking about a different case. He's talking about the case where he did say li. Okay, that was the Talmud's answer. And then we went to a separate point. Then why did we say it? We said it for those last two cases, right? But the second of each of the cases, right? So then Tosas came along, and this is really the point that we wanted to, just the nice piece of logic, I think, in terms of just questioning. The Talmud had a question, right? 80%. Ambiguity, does that work? Shmuel says yes. Mishnah seems to imply no. Comes along Tosas and says, what do you mean? That was not 80% from the Mishnah. That was a 40% case. Because I shall be doesn't imply 80% that you mean Nazir. It could be a Tanis. Comes along Tosas with an answer, and Tosas says, no, really it is 80%.
So we're back to the question.
And and therefore the Talmud's good, right? Meaning, right? So very good, but it's important.
So,
right?
We got back to the question.
We got back to the question, right? I mean, it's important always to get right. Like I said, Rebbe used to always say, you have to always remember assembly line in the Talmud. So that's why the Talmud had a question answer. The questioning. You have to know which step you're holding at. So Tosas was asking on the Talmud's question. That means Tosas wanted to either question the question, right? So if you then provide an answer, so your answer is now bringing back the Talmud's question.